Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. We are going to dive into episode 5 of Ahsoka. Oh my god. This was what we wanted. It was everything. Plenty of things to talk about here. So we're going to dive into all of it. What an incredible, incredible episode. We start out with the fact that this episode wasn't exactly the way we kind of thought. I think both of us thought, I specifically really thought this would be a good 75% Anakin and Ahsoka. It was about 50 to 40% Anakin and Ahsoka, which was good enough for me because it still hit all of the same story beats I was hoping it would. This was just nonetheless an incredible setup episode while also being an incredible character driven episode. Let's talk about that first part of the episode though. Let's start with that because everybody wants to talk about the Clone Wars stuff, Anakin going through the progression of all of Ahsoka's outfits and lightsabers and her life basically. Let's talk about that. Sanak, what was your reaction initially when Anakin cuts the floor of the world between worlds and she falls through and we see the Clone Wars?
Well, I just started laughing. I was like, of course, the chosen one of all people would be like, even if this is the world between worlds, I'm just so powerful enough to just use my lightsaber and just chop the floor and make a weird dreamscape for my former Padawan. It's insane to think about. I knew to a degree that they really wanted to make the live action Clone Wars suits look good and also not have to deal too much with environment, right? To kind of keep the dream haziness, but also low key the budget down. So I was already expecting some sort of cheat there. So everything is kind of smoky, right? And seeing something like Caesar Mandalore in the smoke, you're like, okay, well, it really wasn't. Like she was zooming through. She probably avoided most of it. And that's Ariana Greenblatt. Strong pick. I think it took me a second because it's like you're bouncing back and forth between like the experience just happening and that version of Ahsoka telling it, and then the Ahsoka that we're watching the show kind of jumping in and finally wrestling control of that situation, but also just letting it wash over, right? So it took a second, but afterwards I was like, yeah, she's totally selling it with her own voice. But even before that, I don't know. We've talked about the Clone Wars, but I want to go back just a little bit because how can we forget about how this like sequence starts, right? Anakin just being like, I can teach you stuff. She's like, really? Like, what can you teach me? And he's like, last lesson, let's go, right? Like that banter was there immediately when Hayden actually got a swing. Like people say prequel like cinematography, it's like it's all just pre-organized, right? Like this doesn't seem realistic. It's like they're dancing. They obviously aren't striking for the body. Yada 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 yada. He had power on those, and he was still that quick at this age. I'm sure he did a lot of that by himself. This was a man for like 20 years who did not inhabit this character, and it feels like he only took it another level further. Which I appreciate his dedication. I'm sure working on Kenobi in this, yeah, that it really brought him physically back into the Anakin body too. I'm gonna let you just handle Caesar Mandalore. Hayden is back, guys. Like the deepfake, everything CGI cleanup worked post Return of the Jedi, but still looking almost like how he did in 2004 when he's filming this. Like I guess like the imperfection of the technique play into the favor of his character here, as opposed to how it looked like in the Kenobi fight. Yeah, if we had to lose money for that to see this, I'm happy. Honestly, like at this point.
It looked so good. It literally looked like Hayden Christensen from 2005 with with Revenge of the Sith. Like there were no discernible differences. Where like last episode, the close up of him, it looked very smooth and kind of CG-ish. It has that like untextured look a little bit to his face. This looked like he was just ported out of Revenge of the Sith. Like it did not look any different. I loved it. I did want to talk about the lightsaber dueling too because it was so good. And where you see in Obi-Wan the little training session that Obi-Wan and Anakin have, the dueling style feels like Anakin, but Attack of the Clones, pre-Attack of the Clones, even Anakin doesn't quite have the same style that Jedi Knight Anakin does in Revenge of the Sith. And this was discernibly that same style, like all his behind the back twists and the way he just pushes and pokes and prods and just he's so powerful here. And you feel it. You really feel it. The moment when he steps away from Ahsoka at the end, when his eyes are Sith yellow, and then he kind of it fades away and he has that smile. Even though Hayden Christensen doesn't get to play the more jokey, fun version of Anakin that we see in the Clone Wars, I thought he picked that version up so well. Like it seemed so natural for him. The way he was throwing in lines, and I love that moment what they have together when he's joking like Matt Lanter's Anakin, and Ahsoka's like, "This is a war. What, you really want to joke right now?" And he just kind of turns back into serious Anakin, and he's like, "What do you want me to do? You're you're a kid in the middle of a war. This is terrible. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to teach you?" I thought that was beautiful, and all of their dialogue worked wonderfully. I mean, of course, Captain Rex showing up just in the background that got me to like go, "Oh my god!" Like just shout out. Even and unfortunately, only one line from him, but at least now we have like an official Tamora Morrison line as Captain Rex, and I'd love to see him return in this show. Probably not in this show, but maybe in the film when we get back to these characters. I loved how every single time Ahsoka gets back into the fight, that's when we progress and we see her in her next outfit. We start with the tails one, like you mentioned, that is replacing the season 1 and 2 outfit. And then we jump into the 3, 4, and 5 outfit, and then we get in the season 7 outfit. And they kept a consistency that made her feel like the way Ariana Greenblatt was able to play her. You feel her growing up even in those moments, even though this is an Ahsoka that is out of time, has the memories from the present day we're seeing in the show, but is falling back into these moments, forgetting about it for a second, and then growing up. I also loved the costume Anakin had from the Clone Wars season 1 and 2 that he was wearing. It looked so good. Finally getting to see that like armor Jedi style in live action. I was expecting, more from the world between worlds aspect of it. I don't dislike what we got. I absolutely love what we got. Like I expected a bit more Rebels stuff here, especially with the Rebels characters being like the main characters of this. Like I thought this would go obviously into kind of who Kanan is, because Kanan is name dropped at the beginning of this episode. I thought it would go into Kanan's sacrifice and all that, but a lot of that has nothing to do with Ahsoka. So I think this does focus and work strongly. The only thing maybe I wanted a little bit more of, and let me get your thoughts on this too, was the Vader stuff. Like we get it, but it's more shown, not said. I would have loved to see a bit more of her and Anakin going back and forth on what's the philosophy that you have now. Why are you okay teaching me now that you're done with being Vader versus what you turned into, because that plays strongly in the first part of the Clone Wars flashback, and then it kind of is like she conquers Vader and she conquers her fear, I guess, of turning into Vader, but we don't necessarily get like why did you become Vader? What was, a lot of that conflict that I wanted to see the two of them kind of go at each other with.
I feel like that kind of ties back to his own lesson though, right? Like after, he finally like she turns on him, she's like, I got you now. I got you in the red lightsaber, right? You're trying to make a big fuss about it, but what can you teach me? Like, and then that resentment hits. She's like, what can you teach me? Like, you are my master. I still love you, but you're a monster. You've killed so many. Look, I don't I do wonder how much Luke has also told her about, saving his father, seeing Anakin at the end as opposed to Vader. I see that feeling. I understand it. I like it because you're letting him take that first step to like, you know what? I made so many mistakes. I don't expect you to ever truly forgive me, but I'm just gonna let you understand that at this point, past my death, couple years to really think and dwell on it. In the moment that mattered, it all worked out. Like I was saved by my son, but I also defeated the greatest threat to the galaxy that we've seen in the millennium, right? It's not about like working out what's wrong with him, really examining their relationship right now. It's more about Ahsoka, you were beaten by Baylan. There are things that you're just not accepting about yourself, things that you're forgetting, things that you're blocking off. Remember when we were together and it was good, and yet still the difficulties of that and what that taught you. That's the whole point of the sequence. So it's like Anakin knows in a way, and Filoni knows that we have to cut Anakin a little bit of slack. It's the point that he's trying to like come to grips with his legacy as opposed to just like denying it, blocking it off, just being in pain about it. So he did what he had to do for Ahsoka. That's how I feel like this story around the world between worlds is centered. Anakin, you did well. This is what she needed, exactly the amount she needed. You can kind of protect yourself a little bit from some of the more difficult answers and conversations, but for now, you put her in the right place. And then they threw us into what I'm going to pass over to you, the most stunning set work I've seen. pure rebels, but in a more fulfilling way of describing it. I never doubted him, but I think it's okay to be feeling like you're amazed still. Like the way he has evolved with his own show, the pressures of being a showrunner are different than being just a creative director and kind of working on the story and some animatics. Jump into live action, he followed a script, he wrote it, sure, but he let other people kind of handle the visuals to a degree. This, you could feel his fingertips on it, and yeah, I think it was incredible.
Yeah, that final shot is very sci-fi almost, very slow moving. It's the beginning of a new adventure, and even though we only have 3 episodes left, it's gonna lead into this film, which, I mean, it's set up to be incredibly epic. I That's just the number one word I love to apply to Ahsoka, and maybe, people don't feel this way who are watching who haven't watched Rebels, but there are such strong stakes by just the sheer fact that Thrawn is returning that this show has always felt epic. The dialogue feels elevated. This is Star Wars trying to show you the threats that can possibly come. And I think it is setting up that whole other side of the universe, played out in the New Republic film, played out in the new Jedi Order film. All that stuff is coming. It's a little unfortunate that Hera didn't go with them. Like, I would have loved to see Hera part of the show more, because I really bought into Mary Elizabeth Winstead's performance. Like, I think she is wonderful as Hera, and I've loved getting to know Jason as well. I'm excited for whatever the future of those characters hold. And this episode ended in a way that really just felt like this almost was the mid-season episode. Like, this was the one saying, here we go. This is the next journey coming. And as for Anakin too, again, I don't want this to be the last we see of Anakin. I would love this to not just be some construct of the Force that she met in the world between worlds when she was dying and kind of needed it. I would love this to have been Anakin's actual Force ghost that was there for her in a moment when she had lost and was lost both mentally and physically. And so when we get to a point later in the show where she's going to encounter a problem that might seem too big for her to handle, I would love Anakin's voice to at least be there to help guide her. I think that would be a way to tie this all full circle. I mean, they did put him on the poster. Thank you to everybody who's joined us along the way. Make sure you watch predictions on Friday. If you missed the beginning of the stream, you can go back and watch it on replay. Stay tuned as well for a tier list. We do have a tier list coming out, animated character rankings. So make sure you check that out as well. That should be coming out on Monday. Thanks so much to everybody for the love and support on this channel. We love the community we've built here, and we appreciate all of you who have joined us, sent in your chats, and just made this viewing experience for Ahsoka really, really great. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.